back, everybody. WHIP Radio here in Philadelphia. Now joining us on the hotline is the play-by-play voice of your New York Hockey Rangers, and he's been all over the country, dating back to last postseason where he was going East Coast to West Coast, and now he's going from New York to Montreal and then to the nation's capital in Washington, D.C., and he is our good friend. That is Kenny Albert from ESPN Radio, MSG Network, and also NBC Sports. Kenny, it's Zach and Michael here in Philadelphia. Thanks for a few minutes. And how are you?
I'm good, guys. Actually, I've already been in 2 countries today. So by 7:45, I was able to say that I've been in 2 countries. But it's been a lot of fun, and looking forward to Game 3 here in D.C. tonight.
I never feel bad about asking a guest to come on this show, and I always love having you on. But, Kenny, there's actually pain in my fingers when I text you asking you to come on this show, just because I know you don't get that much sleep in the NHL playoffs during the postseason. And I know you love doing these games. I can hear it from the excitement in your voice on each and every shift. But you don't get that much sleep. If you had to say how many hours of sleep you got this past week, what would the number be?
Well, this week coming up, today, and then the next 4 or 5 days, there won't be much, maybe 4 or 5 hours a night. Last night, for example, the game in Montreal ended about 9:30. Tried to go to bed on the early side, but didn't fall asleep till about 11:15 or so, and I was up at 3:30 for a flight this morning. I have a little later one tomorrow off to Minnesota, but this week's a rough one. But it's a lot of fun, and try to get a nap during the day. I'm not usually a napper, but this time of year I have to try and sneak them in when I can.
Well, here in Philadelphia, Flyers fans are getting a lot of sleep because the team's not in the postseason. Ron Hextall may not be getting that much sleep because he's trying to look for the next head coach of the Philadelphia Flyers as Chief Craig Berube is out. If you had to give me a few list of names or some guys that you like to see be the next Flyers head coach, who would be some of them?
Well, that's a good question. There are certainly a lot of candidates out there, and there are 6 or 7 job openings right now in the National Hockey League as far as head coaches. Now, let me ask you this, given that you're around Philadelphia a lot more often than I am, and would Mike Keenan too, has that been mentioned yet? I've heard that rumor that potentially the Flyers would bring back Mike Keenan. Haven't heard it from sources within the organization, of course, but he's had great success in Russia the last 2 years, won a championship last year. And just throwing the name out, but what about John Tortorella? Would the Flyers consider him?
I think John Tortorella is more of a media hype right now, and it's guys that just want him here because he would be so fun to cover. Keenan has been a name that I've seen on some blogs and through some writers, but the one guy that I actually want, Kenny, is Peter DeBoer because he knows his division very well and has won with not the best of talent.
Right, and he's gotten to the Stanley Cup Finals with New Jersey, and Todd McClellan's out there, the former coach in San Jose, and there are some other terrific candidates. So it'll be interesting to see how the when the carousel stops spinning, where all these coaches wind up.
All right, let's transition now to the actual play on the ice then. I don't really get where you were going with this tweet, and I do appreciate the kind words because Mark Messier is the staple of New York Rangers playoff hockey. So is Henrik Lundqvist now these days, and you said I was a staple of New York Rangers playoff hockey. So I do appreciate the kind words, but one guy that does need to step up, and he had a good game too, but he hasn't been putting the biscuit in the basket that consistently in the playoffs after really a tremendous regular season is Rick Nash. Is it only a matter of time before he starts breaking out and getting a lot of goals on the stat sheet?
I think he's been one of the Rangers' best players in the playoffs, Zach, to be honest. You look at some of the big assists in round 1 against Pittsburgh. The first game, a set play, he puts the puck right on the pads of Fleury and Brassard's there to knock it in 28 seconds into the game. And then in game 3 in Pittsburgh, another huge assist on the Brassard goal. And then he was heavily responsible for 2 of the goals the Rangers scored in Game 2 against Washington. He screened Holtby. That's the only reason why Dan Boyle's shot went in, because he was standing in front of the goaltender, and then he assisted on the game winner by Brassard. So I think people have to look at a lot more than the goals when it comes to Rick Nash. He plays 200 feet. He kills penalties. He's made some great defensive plays, and I really feel he's been one of the Rangers' best players in the playoffs so far.
We're speaking to the well-traveled broadcaster, Kenny Albert, who's been in and out of Canada, USA. Now he's down south in Washington. And now Rick Nash isn't alone here. There are many guys who are big-time players on their teams, between Rick Nash, Marty St. Louis, Thomas Vanek, Steven Stamkos. Half of those guys only have 1 goal. Thomas Vanek and Marty St. Louis have 0. How often do we see it that these big-time players don't get big-time goals in the playoffs?
Well, in the playoffs, the games are a lot lower scoring, which is so many 2-1 games. And you look at the goaltenders who are still remaining among the 8 teams. I mean, these are the best goaltenders in the world. So not that easy to score unless you're Tyler Johnson, I guess, or Colin Wilson or Philip Forsberg or Tarasenko in the first round. But Stamkos had a huge game last night, scored his first playoff goal, assisted on 2 others. And again, John Cooper kind of said the same thing yesterday in the morning that I said about Nash. He's not only there to score goals; he does so many other things. And Ken Hitchcock said the same thing in the New York Post today about Nash, that he's playing so well in all 3 zones, whether it's killing penalties or making defensive plays in the neutral zone. So, yes, it would be nice to have more goals from those guys, but they're doing a lot of other things to contribute to their team's success.
As you mentioned, the 8 remaining goalies are all world, and there's a reason they're here. The stats back it up. Carey Price is expected to win the Vezina and may even win the Hart Trophy. A lot of people are leaning toward him winning the Hart Trophy for MVP of the league. But he did seem rather complacent last night. I don't know if it was because of the penalties against, but what did you see, especially being there last night with Carey Price's play?
Right, very unusual for Price to allow that many goals. I don't think they were all his fault. Tampa Bay had such great puck movement, and they scored 4 on the power play, so you can't pin it all on Carey Price. The Canadians took a number of questionable penalties and then really struggled on the penalty kill. Tampa Bay, through their first 2 power plays last night, had been 0 for their last 25 on the power play. And then not only do they score 4 power play goals, but they do it on 4 consecutive shots, which is incredible. You go from 0 for 25 to 4 straight shots scoring a power play goal. As far as Price goes, he had not given up 6 goals in a game all season during the regular season or the playoffs to that point. But I think it was, a lot of it had to do with the penalties and the guys in front of him.
And last night, let's just be realistic too, and you even said it, Montreal just wasn't that disciplined of a hockey team last night. They took way too many power plays, and a team like Tampa Bay, I know they haven't been great this year on the power play, but they're just so strong offensively. And last year we saw Montreal in the Eastern Conference Finals to the Rangers go down 0-2 on their home ice, and then they came back and they had to fight off a late Chris Kreider goal in overtime. Eventually they won the game and got Game 3. If Montreal is going to try to make this a series, they're going to have to win Game 3. What are some things they have to improve on to put themselves in that position?
Right. Well, it certainly won't be easy, but anytime you have a Carey Price, you certainly have a chance. They have to go on the road now after 2 days off. They won't play today or tomorrow, then back-to-back games Wednesday and Thursday down in Tampa. There was an arena issue on Tuesday, and it turned out that event was actually canceled, so they could have played on Tuesday, but they'll keep the schedule as is. But, the main thing is you have to stay out of the penalty box. Now, sometimes teams in the playoffs feel more pressure at home to do well in front of their home fans. A lot of times there's less pressure on the road, so maybe that'll help the Canadians. They shuffled their lines around last night, so we'll see what Michel Therrien has in store for Game 3. But, bad penalties last night. Prush takes a roughing penalty, and then he gets the unsportsmanlike conduct. I know he had an issue with the referee, Brad Watson. Then Subban cross-checks Ryan Callahan, and the Lightning wind up scoring their first power play goal with Subban in the box, then some more questionable penalties in the second and third period.
Wrapping up with Kenny Albert from MSG and NBC Sports. Ovechkin has been so stellar in these first 2 games of the series. He stole Game 1, even down to the wire. He made such a good play in those final seconds when Joe Ward scores the goal. And then in Game 2, he kept the Capitals in it with just an unbelievable shot. He had 2 really good defenders on him, went down on a knee, and still found a way to put the puck in the back of the hockey net past Heinrich Lundqvist. The Rangers, we know they're one of the better defensive teams in the National Hockey League. I just want to get your take on what the Rangers can do better up against Alexander Ovechkin.
Well, they probably can't do much better. I mean, he's an unbelievable player, and McDonough and Girardi have done a terrific job on him. He does have 2 goals in the series and had the assist on the Ward goal, but when those guys are out there against him, he doesn't score too many goals. He did the other day, and that was a world-class play by Ovechkin, an unbelievable shot. So sometimes you just have to tip your cap to the opponent, but he's really bought into Barry Trotz's system. 53 goals this year, 25 on the power play. He goes from a -35 to a +10. So you just have to marvel at the guy who right now is probably the top forward in the National Hockey League.
You were fortunate enough to be able to call a good portion of the games in the Islanders-Capitals series, and Alexander Ovechkin did only score 2 goals in that 7-game series. He already has 2 goals in 2 games against the Rangers. What do the Rangers need to do to take a book from the Islanders' playbook to make sure they can shut down Ovechkin for the remainder of this series so that Ovechkin doesn't come up to Lundqvist and say all series yet again to him?
Right. Well, I don't think it's necessarily taking something out of the Islanders' playbook because the Rangers have faced them so many times in the playoffs through the years. McDonough and Girardi have now played 28 playoff games against Ovechkin. So, interesting comments from Girardi the other day. He talked about how you have to try to get Ovechkin to go to the middle of the ice and go to his backhand, try to force him to his backhand so he can't get that terrific forehand shot away. But again, the goal the other day, there probably aren't any defensemen in the league who would be able to stop that, or any goaltender. When you look at, it's amazing how fast his 2 goals in this series have come out of the net after they go in. They come out almost as quickly as they go in. So, tremendous player, and the Rangers, again tonight, they won't have the matchup that they do at home, so it'll be a little more of a challenge for Wayne Media to get Girardi and McDonough on against Ovechkin since the Capitals had the last change.
Well, Kenny, I hope you get some sleep, and I know it must be tough with the adrenaline rush that you get from all of these games. I always will never forget your call in Game 5 many years ago when Brad Richards put the puck in with under 10 seconds left in that game, when you were just chanting, "He scores, he scores, he scores." But we do hope you get some sleep, and we'll continue to listen and see you on the television and radio front. We appreciate a few minutes today.
All right, thanks, guys, for joining again tonight. Hopefully we'll do it again soon.
Sounds good. There's Kenny Albert from NBC and NBC Sports. Time in the WHIP studios is 11:28. You want to talk about one of the nicest guys in the industry? Michael Zahn, Kenny Albert is one of them.
He most certainly is. Very, very personable. Was giving us realistic answers, was telling us what needs to happen, and the fact that he was even able to hop on. I had said to you when we were preparing for the show, I said to you, I cannot believe Kenny Albert said yes to you. I couldn't believe it.
Well, I see him every Rangers game.
You're a staple.
And he is one of the nicest guys you'll ever meet. And, hey, if he says I'm a staple of playoff hockey and he's the Rangers broadcaster, I guess he would want to see me.
I guess so.
So there's that. All right, time in the WHIP studios is 11:28. We'll take a quick break, and when we get on back, we got to do some more sports talk. We're going to talk about the disappointing Mayweather-Pacquiao fight, and I will tell you why, even though I watched the fight, I'm so thankful I didn't pay the $100. Gelb and Zahn here with you. We'll take a quick break, and we'll be right back.